Hello, everybody. Welcome to my talk about settings and configuration management. My name is Benjamin Franzke. You can call me Ben. I'm a developer, core merger, and security team member. Yeah, and working on Typo 3 full time since 1 year. Since when? It's all right. That's fine. Okay, so a good colleague of mine approached me and said, I need validated and reliable configuration settings, like TypoScript constants, but available everywhere. And I want them to be easy enough to use them for a simple portfolio site. But they also need to cover all the use cases for complex multi-site requirements like big corporate sites or university sites or whatever. So, yeah, we're developers. Um, and let's do settings. Um, what do we need to do first? We need to define requirements. And one of our most loved requirement is our strict types. So if we talk about settings, we need types. Invalid types must be ignored or must throw errors. We want to be able to map settings to object types. And we, of course, want to keep backwards compatibility in account. And that means legacy site settings must work as well. If whatever we provide an existing instance that updates to our new system needs to work as before. And settings need to be validated. We want values to be reliable and even cacheable. Same as for types applies as well. Invalid values must be ignored. We don't want invalid values in our front-end stack. We only want valid settings so we can rely on them. And validation needs to be declarative in order to support the user interface, to be able to not just validate on demand, but to know upfront what is a valid value, to provide proper user interfaces like a range slider or whatever. If we can only validate on demand, we cannot provide a user interface that works well. And very important, we need defaults. A setting without a default value is pretty useless because you cannot use it without checking for the existence. If you might remember some Fluid templates or TypoScript configurations, what happens if your setting is not defined? If you are lucky, it's just an empty CSS variable. If you are unlucky, it's a parse error or whatever. We even say a setting and a setting default is so important that the removal of a setting is a breaking change, because a default value that was that previously provided a setting is now gone. So you can no longer rely on the setting to be available. That means a setting is a very crucial and aspect of a system. And settings must be declarative. We want them to be easy copy pastable. We don't want deep nested structures. It's important to be easy to parse. And in order to write, for example, a JSON schema, which can help developers when they write a configuration in their editors. So that's something which should be easy with Typo 3, because Typo 3 is configuration anyway. We are pretty good with configuration. So if we look at our Typo 3 world globe, we have TypoScript setup, we got local configuration since ages. With version 9, we gained site configuration. We have extension configuration. We have page TypoScript configuration, and we have user configuration. So, loaded. Wait. maybe it's not that simple, because going back to our graph, settings is basically this: an explosion that needs to be injected everywhere. And we cannot inject settings everywhere, because settings need to be scoped. We need to ensure or decide what a setting is. Is it a site? Is it a global setting? Is it a site relevant setting? Is it a user setting? We can't just say, here's a setting and you have to set it. That means we also need to decide when is a setting to be provided in a user interface. There's nothing more annoying than a setting that is available but does nothing because there's no consumer of the setting. That means whenever your integrator or your editor sees a setting, this needs to do something. It's bad behavior if we provide a setting but do not act upon that setting. That means whenever you enable a feature, or you want the setting to be automatically enabled as well, they form one envelope. They need to be in sync. And yeah, of course, when we have settings, we also need to use them, and we want to use them in our existing infrastructure. That means we want to use it in TypoScript. That means in front-end context. We want to use it in backend context. That means, for example, in page TypoScript TSConfig, and of course in Fluid. And last but not least, we need to keep backward compatibility into account. We already have a lot of settings, as I showed, and whenever we add now a new, like 8, all of the existing ones should not break and need to work as well. You need to upgrade an existing system without breaking it, but also we want to integrate these new settings. That means we need to revisit our structure. So we took a step back and looked at this current state again and thought, we cannot just add another one, but we have to think about our structure. And this is what we came up with. We decided system and extension configuration is basically the same. The only difference is that system and extension configuration is, system configuration is provided by Typo3, extension configuration by extensions. System configuration cannot be extended by extensions, but that's a technical detail. It's actually just technical debt because we didn't fix it yet to synchronize them. So the plan is, let's scope them together, and then think about settings that are actually or configuration that are always bound to a site. Like, think of a site that or a type of 3 site that consists of multiple subsites, like for clinics or universities. You always have to define the same configuration values again and again, and you need to keep them in sync. And that's, for example, TypoScript setup and page TSConfig and site configuration. Most of the times, you have a buggy site if one of these 3 configurations are not in sync. And so whenever we want to add settings, we need them in all of the 3. But to do that, we need to think about a site scope. And that's why we decided to introduce site sets in Typo3 version 13. That's in. Thank you. So, what are site sets? They are basically an envelope for settings for TypoScript, for TypoScript config, and they should become that for enabled content elements, and they are intended to be shareable between sites and to compose them. That's very dry, and I think we should look into them to be able to understand them, because this is just theoretics. So site set features. What is provided by a site set? A site set is basically a folder that is provided by an extension. So it is listed inside the configuration/sets folder, where multiple sets, I'll come to that in a minute, can be defined. And a set has one required and mandatory configuration file. That is the file config.yaml. This one acts as a entry point for every set, and the availability of this file implicitly registers the set in typo3. Every active extension can add such a file, and this will create a set. A set is intended to be very basic. It has two mandatory properties: a name that identifies the set, which is used to reference the set in your code, and also in typo3 configuration, like site configuration, and a label. The label is relevant for the user interface, where an integrator or an advanced editor can select a set. Yeah, so this is for your user, and also helps to document what the set is for. And a set can be used and referenced, as I said, in the user interface. So our settings configuration management module has a new option. It is called sets for this site, where you can select one or multiple sets that will become active for this site. This writes a new option named dependencies into the configuration file. Yeah, this is an array, as I already said, and this references the name of the set. And whenever such a dependency is added to a site, the site now is transformed into a set provider that hooks into the different systems in Typo3. It hooks into the TypoScript record, or better, it's a native integration there. It's not a hook. It's natively integrated as a first-class citizen. So it provides TypoScript records. It provides page TSConfig records, and that's what this actually is about. And it provides settings. Yeah, one more explanation for sets and why they're called sets. Sets allow to use, and I actually encourage you to do that, to use subsets to structure your code. That means individual features, like having a hero or having a slider feature, which might be enabled or is intended to be enabled for like 2 of your 5 sites in a TypoScript installation, could all become a small set. And then you have like collecting sets, like for one site or for multiple sites, that compose these subsets into a bigger set. Yeah, that's where the name set is from, because you have small pieces and you have big pieces which actually form a complete site. So yeah, that's why this generic name site sets. And together with the site sets, we introduced the settings definitions YAML. This is the file which tries to provide most of the functionality, or to implement the functionality that we defined in our settings requirements. So we define a type, like in this case, a color type. We define a default value, and label, description, and categories for UI. First, I actually want to say this file is a flat structure, and every setting is always listed in the second indentation. Like in this case, the setting you are defining is mysite.brandcolor. And that's what our requirements desired. Like We want this to be easily parsable. We do not want to look like, okay, I have to iterate maybe 10 or 15 nesting levels deep to find a setting in some definition. Therefore, whatever your prefixes or your namespacing of settings is, you will define that on the second level, like mysite.brandcolor.whatever. And on the third level, it's always there, the definitions. This is with the hope to be easily to copy paste, to change. This will bring the slight disadvantage that the prefixes will need to be repeated. But we hope this is still useful because the setting definitions for the integrator and the developer will be easier to manage because your code has a flat structure. And I already said label, description, and categories. These are values that are important for your users, for your advanced editors, and for your integrators. If you're an extension provider, for example, and writing a slider extension and provide a slider set, you want this to be configurable, and the user has to find it in some user interface. And therefore, again, a label, a description, and categories. This will hopefully be until LTS release, be included in a settings editor. I'll give a slide overview how this might look. My colleague told me I should really emphasize that this is a 2-year-old screenshot and it might look completely different. Yeah, but you see what this is about. We want a structured settings interface where we have categories, subcategories, where we have a search function, and which guides the user on how to use the setting, and also informs the user whether a setting is valid or invalid. It will inform the user whether an invalid setting has been defined and is therefore not used, but the default value is used. Yeah, so that this is important. Why we have a declarative default value and not just a value at some point somewhere. We need this default value in order to be able to fall back to it in case at some other place an invalid setting is defined. Yeah, so look forward to it. We hope to provide it with the LTS release. And then there's a settings.yaml file. This is actually special, and we thought about how do we call it, and let's explain it from the scope of the site. You might know this feature that in version 12 you can already put a settings.yaml file in a site configuration folder, and they are provided as site settings already, but they are not typed yet. They do not have a registry, but they are already pretty good. So we kept this feature as is, but underlaid it with the definitions. That means if definitions are available, these settings will be validated. If definitions are available, these settings will be defined even if you do not define them. And of course, as I talked about composable sets, like think about you use a slider set and want to configure this set. In this case, you in this case, you would include this settings YAML file in your set to configure a setting for another set that you are using. Yeah, that sounds confusing, but once you're using this, this may become pretty helpful because this allows you to provide settings for other sets in your extension without the need to configure them in the backend UI. This can become useful for complex sites where you manage a lot of multi-site sets and sites, and you do not want to, like, for example, the brown color. You do not want to change it in 20 sites and click save and save and save and save, but you would share this configuration in one common set or subset, whatever you call it. And therefore you can provide settings that settings additionally to the definition, that defines settings. Okay. This is what we had. Now, I want to explain the typing mechanism. This is a perfectly valid file that is loaded, but the value you set, brown color equals 3, will be ignored because it is an invalid type. We've implemented a color validator which checks, is it a valid color? Does it contain valid characters? Is it a string? And it's not, so we will default to the black value we defined in the definition file. Also, if you define some invalid hex variables, it's also invalidated. It's fallbacks to the default value. This is quite opinionated, but this is important for your front-end integration. You can rely on a reliable setting whenever you use it. That means you can set your CSS variable or whatever to this setting because we have validated this once. We cache the result, and on every front-end rendering invocation, the validated setting can be used, and without checks and whatever. And you can even use these settings in your existing TypoScript. So, for example, if you plan to add CSS properties to style text, then what's that? This is a TypoScript constant. So we injected these settings into TypeScript constants. This is actually done in a way that they underlay TypeScript constants. So TypeScript constants now become a container for first level settings. And if you really still need them, you probably do not need additional TypeScript constants, then they will be loaded as well. But all site settings that are defined will be loaded as constants and are ready to use. And they are reliably ready to use. This code cannot be buggy. With a traditional TypeScript setup where you have to load setup and constants individually, you cannot be sure that these constants are actually available. They might be available, but they could also be not available. And then you render invalid CSS code, which invalidates all of your markup. And so this is the why we have these strong defaults like validation and defaults. And also in the new shiny page view fluid objects, they are available and made available as settings dot my site dot whatever. So you can use them in the fluid template right away. In PHP, there's an API to where you would fetch the site from a request. That means, for example, that's too technical. The site is resolved from the current request, and this resolved site is stored as an attribute of the request. That means whenever the site resolving middleware run, you can access the site from a request object. And from that site, you can fetch a setting. And again, you can be sure this one is available and usable. And exactly, because we had this cluster with we need TypoScript, we need page TSConfig, and we have site configuration. Therefore, we included an let's say automagic and an auto loading that the file names setup.typoscript and page.tsconfig, whenever they are put into the folder set / whatever your set is called, they will be loaded whenever the set is active. That means you can use this nice new feature from Benny Mac, the page view object, put it into setup.typoscript, and it will just be loaded whenever your set is available. No need to create a database record, no for this template record, no need to include dependencies. It's just there. Same for page TSConfig, same approach. It will be loaded, but in the backend. So you can, for example, provide backend layouts which are needed for your frontend templates. Again, the same story. A backend layout is worthless without a corresponding frontend rendering. So they form one piece, and therefore we want you to define them as one set. Yeah. So whenever you activate it, both become active. And yeah, we actually plan to integrate more things into these sets. And these uh, we didn't think from the start to do that, but it turns out it would be cool to reference content elements and to only make them available if a set is active, and also to provide template overrides. This is something we are still working on, and we hope to inform you soon about things that are upcoming. Now, some specific design decisions that I would like to highlight. We have dependencies in sets. You already saw them. And the reason is subsets and sets. We want composability. We want sets to be composed of other sets, and you do not want to manage the sets of the dependencies, and you do not want to think about ordering. Yeah, do I need to load form first or a bootstrap package? Do I need to load news and then bootstrap package or whatever? That's something you actually shouldn't care about. Whenever two sets have relations to each other, they have to express it. And you as an integrator or a developer, you just depend on them. This is why we need ordering. And another important factor is deduplication. Whenever we talk about composing things about from multiple sets, there's the chance that multiple sets require the same TypoScript. Let me give an example. You use the Bootstrap package, which provides form integration and therefore includes form TypoScript. And you also needed form and included form TypoScript. What happened? Form TypoScript was included twice, and actually it was passed twice, evaluated twice, and your rendering became slow, and you actually have had unneeded TypoScript and duplicated ones. Therefore, my desire and wish is do not import from other extensions. That means stop doing imports from another extension. Use dependencies. What you can still use relative imports to structure your code. That's perfectly fine. But do not import from other extensions, because you lose all the benefits of sets, because now if you just load this setup from another extension, the settings are not loaded because there's no declarative way what you're doing. It's just an imperative command, please load this file, but it's only loading the setup file, not constant, not settings, and whatnot. That means our dependencies are actually a dependency tree. Like in this example, you have a set called mySet, which has two dependencies, myCapture and bootstrap package. And both of these dependencies require form. And what deduplication and ordering does for us is that we look at the dependencies and the sub-dependencies, bring them into a linear structure, which is pretty helpful for TypoScript because TypoScript can only render linear structure, no nested structures. Order them, deduplicate, and we have a nice setup and ordering result of what is actually to be loaded and how things are to be evaluated. So in the realization, that means if we have a set loaded, in this case, our style guide demo set from TypoScript core, we have a flat structure, although this was actually a nested dependencies, but they are deduplicated and ordered. This also means that this style of legacy TypoScript definition becomes obsolete. You can still use it. It's still fully supported. It will not break. It can actually apply it on top. So this is what you know from the TypeScript, this template record, where you have to select it, where you manually have to order them, and where you probably forget one or the other, and then everything breaks and you do not find it. This is something we want to avoid. We will not break it, but I encourage you to not use it anymore, but use sets. Sets are scoped. That means sets apply to all pages of one site. That means a site is something that has a site configuration, like with one domain, but it can also be a prefix. They cannot be applied to individual pages. Yeah, you might be used to add additional TypoScript records for one page and another. This is not possible with sets. The idea is most of the things you apply on individual pages are actually things that apply that are more generic settings. Like think of every page or every section has another color. So it was a practice to add a new color setting as a TypoScript setting and apply that on the individual pages. This works until you want to link to a page and now need to know the color of this page. But you do not have this information because it's defined in the scope of that page, but not generally as setting. By the way, page A has color blue. This is why scoping is now in this scope of in the scope of sites, because most of the times our settings are all relevant for one site and not just for one page or for one page tree. And sets do not apply to nested sites. Now, what does that mean? This is for corporate and big websites. You might have like sites where you have an overview site, for example, for universities, which have multiple subsites for each department. And it could have happened if you misconfigured your TypoScript that the TypoScript configuration, in this case for its example site, also was activated for the nested site, because TypoScript could be inherited if you did not set the clear root flag. This is something which we do not support at all anymore. This is a strong default. We do not support inheritance across site boundaries. Instead, you can compose with sets. Whenever you want to share something between sites, you can define it as a set that is a derivation of another set. And then you can share configuration. This is more understandable for the integrator to understand what your site is actually doing. Yeah, this is with the hope. So it's a little bit more complicated, but I hope this will help to prevent bugs. And sets are intended to be deployable. That means we do not need database records. We do no longer need a systemd record to render a TypoScript site. Yeah, this is a new thing. Also, you do not need to reference page TSConfig in the backend field of the pages of your root site. You can ship it in the extension. That means you can use the existing infrastructure. You can upload it to tear or to packages. And it allows, and we will extend on that, for declarative configuration sharing between sites. That's a long requested feature because often in big corporate websites, you have this case like you have a lot of routes and site configurations, and you have to copy that over and over again into like 20 or 30 sites. We are not fully there that to support that for all site configuration options, but that's my hope and plan. So, and actually, we hope to not break, because what was the solution? People used includes in site configuration, which then break caused the site configuration editor to break whenever you saved such a site. This is, yeah, annoying, to be honest, and we want to avoid it because with our new dependencies. Autoloading, I already explained it. The file setup and page TSConfig, they are autoloaded not because we love automagic, but because we want this to be reliable. Yeah, as I said, whenever a setting is there, it needs to be consumed, and it's consumed by TypoScript. Therefore, setup, TypoScript, and page config is autoloaded in backend and frontend context. Also, sets are immutable. That means a set cannot be changed once it's defined. You cannot change the set typostreet/form, not even with a hook. Again, very opinionated, but you can rely on what you require. Whenever you require form, it will be available in that way that form has been implemented by typo3. Whenever someone wants to extend form, it has to derive a new set, and then you can use that. This will make boundaries more clear. Yeah, we as developers are yeah, like to hook into things and just change it. But that's always a problem, because that changes it for everything. And if you ever have like merged two sites into each other, yeah, that's chaos, because we have too many global states and too many global settings. And with these immutable sets, we can rely on the set to be uh, the same in this instance as in another instance. And whenever we derive, we have to change it that way. Exactly. That's what I said. It's composed. And we need compatibility. And we have provided, and that was a big priority, coexistence with systemplate. That means you can still use systemplates on top of site sets. It's not encouraged, but it works. But be prepared, if your systemplate says clear or TypoScript, it's of course cleared. But you can still use like extension TypoScript. But the site provided TypoScript and settings is always loaded first, and the, I call it, legacy systemplate records are loaded afterwards. Yeah. Actually, the systemplate support may become optional in some future release. Why? Because that saves some database queries. We do not need to look for systemplate records anymore, in theory. We don't do that yet. We do not plan to remove it. Yeah, I think it's a crucial feature of Typo3, which existed for 20 years. And I do not intend to break that. Yeah, it's just we make it optional and we provide something new. And I want to have some or give some words about the targets of SiteSet. Who's using it? It's intended to be written by integrators and developers, but also to be used by advanced editors. That means if your use case of your installation is to provide a lot of sites and editors are allowed to create new sites, you always had this conflict of how should this integrator create a TypoScript record that fits these new site, especially if you have like different themes in your site. This now becomes a select option in the site configuration where a theme can be selected. You provide like 3 themes, and your advanced editor can select one of these 3 settings without the ability to break the existing site or the entire site by defining invalid combinations of TypoScript records, for example. So, a summary. Sets are basically deployable systemplate records with dependencies. Yeah, and a bit more. So And you are no longer responsible for managing dependencies of your dependencies. Site settings replace TypoScript constants. Extension should provide sets for their configuration in order so you can depend on them. Yeah, like for example, news would be cool if it provides a set, so you can say depends Georginger/news. And I encourage you to build new sites with sets. You might even build themes with sets because they act as presets. And by the way, site sets were actually just a drive-by for settings, but it turned out they are useful, in my opinion, even more useful than settings alone, because they offer so much functionality that was long overdue, because we can cluster all the required front-end and back-end configuration into one composable piece. So update to TypoScript version 13 and get from this, oh, no TypeScript found, by simply using a dependency to your frontend. So use it. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah. Hi. You talk about the settings definitions YAML, where you define the settings and the type, and you said about there are also validation. So invalid values for us setting will not be used. So fall back to the default. My question is, is there an API to register validators for my settings, or how does the validation work? For example, you had a validation of a hex color, but maybe I want to also use the transparent keyword, which would not be possible when it's checked against the hex color value.
Yeah, so there will be a declarative validation API that's not yet implemented, because whenever you provide a validator, you need to take account for the validation itself, but also for the UI. But as we are currently working on the UI, this is an issue we are currently being working on. But you will be able to provide settings validator, but you cannot hook into, say, like, for this setting, I want to enable this validator, but your settings definition will reference a validator. Basically, like max max colon 5. Yeah. To define an integer value has a maximum value of 5.
Okay. And in the current state, why is the validator for the hex color used in this example? So how does the system know that?
This is not a validator in this case. That's a type
Okay.
assertion.
Okay.
That means this is handled by the fact that it is of type color. This is already doing type checks.
Hi, thanks for the talk. What happens if I define a dependency to an extension that does not have a set by default? Will the TypoScript be included?
You cannot define the. That's a good question. The dependencies are not expressed to extensions, but to sets provided by extension. That means you cannot, although it looks like a composer package name, it's a set name. Yeah, that means the dependencies always reference a set and not an extension. This set name might be the same, and if you only provide one set, it's useful to use your composer package name. That means, for your question, if an extension provides no set, this will invalidate your set because you have provided an invalid dependency. And that means your set is an invalid set and will not be used. This will be, once it's fixed, this is logged as an error, and hopefully will soon be logged also for in the site configuration module as a warning. That's not yet done, but this results in an ignored set.
Because you mentioned to not include and reference any other TypoScript things. So I was wondering if there would be a default if there's no set that you can include this with, let's say, a soft dependency or something?
No, it will not be. Therefore, this demand extension authors, please provide sets so your users can use them. If a set is not provided by an extension author, you can, of course, create a set that like includes their dependencies manually, like a wrapper set. But that's only a hack. Better go on GitHub, create a PR, provide a set, and it will hopefully be merged soon. That's easier than doing a hack in your installation. Just open an issue for your favorite extension and add a set. It should be easy, hopefully.
Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, okay. First of all, thank you very much for this feature and an initiative. Yeah. I have a question regarding the validation again. Because you only mentioned validation regarding the individual settings. Is there something planned to validate the set or the settings as a whole? For example, we have a color pattern defined and we want to have some accessibility check in there so people cannot set in excess or bad contrast, for example, something like that. Is this something which you would like to have in your declarative approach? Because you mentioned JSON schema. To some extent, you can formulate stuff in there, but yeah, I think such things needs to have kind of like scripted or programmatic validation in the end, or even in the UI, like with a backend request check.
Yeah, I actually don't know. The complication isn't the validation on the server side, but the representation for the user interface, because that's a complex task. It sounds easy, but it's quite complex to implement in a user interface, because we need to express relations between settings in a settings interface that might not actually list the setting that you have
Access to
demands on.
Okay.
Yeah. Access is another topic, but you might have a filter for I want to change the brand color, and now I'm changing the brand color, and I have to deny it because another setting that I do not actually see will conflict. So currently no plans. Feel free to come on board and help.
Hi there. So thanks for your talk and this cool feature. Maybe I misunderstand the concept, but when you go to your site settings, you will have all the sets that are provided by the extensions in the set list. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So if every extension provides its own set, an advanced editor might have 20 sets there, but only 3 sets are for my, let's call it themes, which includes all other sets if necessary. So is there an option to define a set only as only as a dependency, but so that is not listed in this list, and so I can provide my whole theme sets there for editors?
That's a very good point and an important one. It's not there yet because I'm not yet sure how to express it. Yeah, basically because of naming. Should sets be called primary sets? Should they be called intermediate or whatever? We don't know yet, but I also think that we will need this because the list of sets will become overwhelming if they are used as utility sets. For now, in this first iteration, we decided to keep it simple. But yes, this is on our plan that this will probably be required. I'm not yet sure whether this is just an on-top filter, like you enable this for editors, or you enable that generally for admins. So we have not decided how to do it exactly, but it will be required. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, are there any more questions?
Hi.
Thank you for the talk. I have a question regarding the format of the settings definitions YAML and the settings YAML. As you already mentioned, it is necessary that the settings itself are defined in one line below them. Why didn't you just take the default YAML structure behavior to do things? Integrators or developers could also do it like you have enforced now, but why enforce them to do this like this instead of another nesting structure?
Yeah, that's a very technical reason or reasoning. It's because you cannot for sure say that a nested option is a new option or a nesting or is already a definition. You can only guess that from the values, and that's always bad. If we have to guess types, then we did something wrong, and therefore I avoided this.
Okay, so it's
you know what I mean?
kind of performance optimization.
No, not really performance. This is about reliability, because you cannot for sure say that there's type colon foo. Yeah, maybe you just wanted to define a sub property type and didn't want to talk about I define the type for the parent. Yeah, and that's the issue. I have to guess, or we'd have to guess what the value is, and this is what we want to avoid. No guessing.
Okay, and regarding the settings YAML, am I right that it is necessary that everything is in a separate line, every segment of the YAML path?
Yes, I'm not sure. I think you can define them inline with JSON syntax. That's YAML.
Okay.
Yeah, you whatever YAML allows to express nesting.
Okay, so there it's possible to do the dot separated segments in one line.
The dot will not work. It's another syntax, but I don't have it at hand.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So it's still time, or should we?
I think because it's just 5 minutes until the next talk.
Yeah, so I'd say thank you very much. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to contact me.